Okay, so welcome everyone. And today we are here to begin to study A Course in Miracles, the text. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and I'm joined with my daughter. Hi, Sonia,
Hi.
and my friend Connie. Can you hear me, Connie?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Great. So welcome. I just want to say that we are starting this journey together because we're all A Course in Miracles students. And even though we've read it a couple of times, I've read it probably about 3 times. Have you read it through, Sonia?
Not the entire thing.
Not the entire
No.
thing. Okay. And I'm sure that, Connie, you've read it a few times.
Actually, once
Once?
completely through and then doing certain sections over. Yeah. So,
Yes. And but we've all done the lessons, correct?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so we're going through the text because there's always things that, let's see, we missed the first time we read it, or there's always things that we, misinterpret or we don't understand. So it's good to be um, reading it together so that we can kind of help each other understand what maybe someone else is not quite understanding. So we'll just be doing it paragraph by paragraph and allowing the Holy Spirit to just kind of guide us and see what what comes through. That will be truly helpful for everyone. So let's see. Should we just get started? Sonia, do you want to take the first paragraph?
Okay. All right. So, Course in Miracles preface. This preface was written in 1977 in response to many requests for a brief introduction to A Course in Miracles. The first two parts, How It Came, What It Is, Helen Schuckman wrote herself. The final part, What It Says, was written by the process of inner dictation described in the preface.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Let's see. So I'm going to read the next paragraph here. So, how it came. A Course in Miracles began with a sudden decision of two people to join in a common goal. Their names were Helen Schuckman and William Thetford, professors of medical psychology at Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons in New York City. It does not matter who they are, except that the story shows that with God, all things are possible. They were anything but spiritual. Their relationship with each other was difficult and often strained, and they were concerned with personal and professional acceptance and status. In general, they had considerable investment in the values of the world. Their lives were hardly in accord with anything the Course advocates. Helen, the one who received the material, describes herself. Okay. So let's see. So one of the things is that they're professors at a medical psychology. Okay. And they were anything but spiritual, um, which is, which to me kind of makes sense because I think that for some of us that grew up in whether it's a religion or whether it's, with a particular spiritual philosophy, we've already established ways of interpreting um, the world with that viewpoint. And we've already given a lot of those, um, ideas like salvation or the idea of, let's see, of spirit, the idea of mind, all those, we've already given them meaning. And it seems to me that for it to come through, people that who did not have that kind of a spiritual background, means that they actually were able to kind of stand back and not really pass, that automatic, oh, I know what you're talking about. That kind of, that, that I know judgment kind of thing that shows up whenever we think we are familiar with whatever the other person is talking about. And this way they're like, if it's just coming through, it's like, okay, I, I don't have any previous, indoctrination in any of the terms that are, coming through here. So it's a really good way to not interfere. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so anyway, okay. So next paragraph, Connie, do you want to go?
Okay. Psychologist, educator, conservative in theory and aesthetic in belief.
Oh, hold on a second. I think that's atheistic. Is that correct? Atheistic?
I think it
Oh,
is atheist.
You're absolutely right. Okay, so this is how Helen is describing herself. Psychologist, educator, conservative in theory, and atheistic in belief.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
was working in a prestigious and highly academic setting, and then something happened that triggered a chain of events I could never have predicted. The head of my department unexpectedly announced that he was tired of the angry and aggressive feelings our attitudes reflected and concluded that, quote, there must be another way, end of quote. As if on cue, I agreed to help him find it. Apparently, this course is the other way.
Yes. Okay. So that's interesting because it's a very similar way, not in form, but in content as to how I came to the course. Because I remember when my children were young, and um, two of them had asthma, including Sonia. And that was very, very, very stressful to see them when they had asthma attacks. And, the difficulty of them breathing, that was clearly stressful for them, but it was really stressful for me just to watch them struggle, for air like that. And I remember thinking, how is that possible? Because I have always um, believed, and I think known at a deeper level, that God is loving. And I had to ask myself, how is that possible that a loving God would allow children to suffer like this? Okay, because from my understanding, everything that happened in the world was, the quote unquote, the will of God. So, so I had to really question that. I'm like saying, how that doesn't, you know, that's a contradiction. And after, really considering that, I had to say there has to be another way. That just can't be true. And so that kind of what started me searching for an alternative way to help them. And of course, I didn't start with A Course in Miracles right away, but I started looking into alternative therapies, of which the EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, was one of them. And then through that, because Gary Craig, the founder of that, was a Course in Miracles student, I, I kind of became interested in that, or at least it piqued my interest. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then, one day the book itself just came to me. I saw it at a garage sale and I bought it. And that's how I started, reading it. but again, it was about the idea that there must be another way, because there's something deep within us that has to, what's the word? That has to really question whether the suffering, and in this case, the conflict and the anger and all of that, whether that is really the only option here. Because I think deep down, we know that that there's something that's not quite true about that. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you've had anything similar, Connie, or if it's just how you came to the course.
Oh, gosh. Well, that could be a little bit of a complex story. So, yeah, but I'm just really struck by the fact that Helen was atheistic. I mean, that is really,
Yeah.
really a big point
Mm-hmm.
in this whole course, I think. And yeah, there has to be another way. And I was also struck by what you said, and that knowing underneath there was, you knew that God is, that God is a loving God. So how could this be?
Mm-hmm.
What was happening with the asthma and all that. So anyway, that's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be another way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do you have anything to add, Sonia?
Um, Actually, like Connie said, the atheistic in belief, how she described herself like that. So I remember when I was 12, I thought, oh, this can't be true. Like, there's no God. Like, why would he like have all this suffering? Why would I be feeling like this, right? And it reminds me of my sister too. But I think it's just really helpful, like Connie was saying too, that she did describe herself like that, because I think if she didn't, it really wouldn't work, because I don't think people would believe or like understand that the course would like be true, you know? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just more comforting, I think, to know that that came from somebody who had no like preconception, no like anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. That's it.
Yeah, it's kind of like almost like a blank slate. So it's almost like you're actually more open to it if you're not already indoctrinated with all these beliefs around what God is,
Yeah.
because they're all concepts that we've made up, and they actually get in the way when we study the course here, because we have to undo all of that to really get underneath the true meaning here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Go ahead, Sonia, you're next.
Okay. Um, Although their intention was serious, they had great difficulty in starting out on their joint venture. But they had given the Holy Spirit the little willingness that, as the course itself was to emphasize again and again, is sufficient to enable him to use any situation for his purposes and provide it with his power.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, and that little willingness you can see is just a little openness um, to seeing things differently. I would say, and it's not like you have to like really be gung ho and you know passionate and all of that. There's just that little opening of the mind to the possibility um, that, you know what, there could be a better way. There really could be. So, okay. So to continue Helen's first person account, 3 startling months preceded the actual writing, during which time Bill suggested that I write down the highly symbolic dreams and descriptions of the strange images that were coming to me. Although I had grown more accustomed to the unexpected by that time, I was still very surprised when I wrote, quote, "This is A Course in Miracles," unquote. That was my introduction to the voice. It made no sound, but seemed to be giving me a kind of rapid inner dictation, which I took down in a shorthand notebook. The writing was never automatic. It could be interrupted at any time and later picked up again. It made me very uncomfortable, but it never seriously occurred to me to stop. It seemed to be a special assignment that I had somehow, somewhere agreed to complete. It represented a truly collaborative venture between Bill and myself, and much of its significance, I am sure, lies in that. I would take down what the voice, quote unquote, said and read it to him the next day, and he typed it from my dictation. I expected he had this special assignment too. Without his encouragement and support, I would never have been able to fulfill mine. The whole process took about 7 years. The text came first, then the workbook for students, and finally the manual for teachers. Only a few minor changes have been made. Chapter titles and subheadings have been inserted in the text, and some of the more personal references that occurred at the beginning have been omitted. Otherwise, the material is substantially unchanged. Okay, so yeah, so I think that it had to have been something that they agreed to somewhere because 7 years is a long time to stick to anything. Especially, when there's no external, there does not seem to be any kind of external or worldly reward, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, wait, I have a question. Wouldn't that be like that agreement, wouldn't that just be a part of the script?
Yes, so somewhere the way she explains it is, it made me very uncomfortable, but somewhere, somehow, it seemed to be a special assignment that I had somehow, somewhere agreed to complete. So it wasn't something that she could actually like pinpoint, when this happened. It could, who knows, it could have been a past lifetime or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she definitely could connect to the idea that she was not being forced to do this,
Mm-hmm.
but that she had willingly agreed to complete this assignment. Um, so, because, to put in that time and energy for 7 years, um, y- you could think of it more in terms of, um, mm, let's see. I was going to say in terms of the idea of completion. You know how sometimes we have a situation that we feel is unresolved for us,
Yeah.
and it kind of just keeps, we try to put it out of our thinking, out of our head, but we always keep coming back to it because there hasn't been any closure to it, or there's no resolution to it. So
Mm-hmm.
it almost seems to me like, that the idea that she agreed to complete it so that it was something that she needed to do for herself to feel like, okay, there, that is taken care of. There's closure to it, and I can have peace now, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was, a very important commitment that they agreed to.
I think it's interesting that she said it was a voice that came through, but it made no sound. It was
Yeah.
just this rapid inner dictation. I think that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I can relate a little bit to that because when I do the muscle testing when I use the surrogate muscle testing with the Ramos clearing technique, because I've done it for so long now, the muscle testing is almost not a muscle testing. It's almost like it's coming through and I'm just confirming it with the muscle testing. So it's a little bit like this. What I'm writing down, doing the clearing, is a little bit like that voice that has no sound, because sometimes in the middle of it, I will get distracted by something, maybe on TV or something that someone is saying. And that will be the next piece that goes into what I'm writing in the clearing. So it's not even like an inner dictation, because it's both. There's no separation between the inner and the outer. They're all just symbols. See, it's all symbolic. I think that's how she said it. She started writing down the highly symbolic dreams and descriptions of the strange images that were coming to me. So it's almost like the unconscious is opening up and she's writing down what's coming through. Yeah.
It makes me curious about her highly symbolic dreams, and if there was ever anything that she wrote about that, or if there was another book regarding that. Just curious about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think that
I
I've
don't know.
actually, yeah.
and strange images, and just kind of curious as to what was actually coming through right before she kind of got this big download. Yeah.
Actually,
Mm-hmm.
Connie, there might be something. I seem to remember something about maybe in some of her poetry. I think she did write some poetry. She did
Oh.
have, I remember hearing about it's a dream where there was she found some scrolls or something, like in a treasure chest or some kind of chest where there were scrolls and she was reading them. So there may be something there written on it.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll try to find that for you, see if I can locate it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see. Who goes after?
I
I
believe
think,
it's me.
yeah, okay.
Okay, the names of the collaborators in the recording of the course do not appear on the cover because the course can and should stand on its own. It is not intended to become the basis for another cult. Its only purpose is to provide a way in which some people will be able to find their own internal teacher.
Okay, so the reason why they didn't put their names here as the authors is because they're not the authors, they're not the originators. So they collaborated in bringing it forth, and they definitely did not want to be the quote unquote, the leaders or be looked at as the leaders of a cult, of people that are following A Course in Miracles, which I think makes a lot of sense because, as it is, a lot of people have, well, a lot of people automatically will be afraid of what they don't know. Okay, so right off the bat, um, anything that is not already, let's say, legitimatized by a religion, by a traditional worldly religion, uh, is often seen as suspect or a threat. by the established religions,
Mhm.
people that follow established religions. So I think that um, I think that's pretty important that they recognized, and maybe because they were in medical psychology, they recognized that this was not something that they could really take credit for. I mean, just because it comes through you. uh, um, and the ego, I'm sure, uh, you know, would have loved to have taken credit for it.
Well, it can make itself special, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, um, okay. What it is? Oh, it's Sonia, right?
Oh, okay. What it is. As its title implies, the course is arranged throughout as a teaching device. It consists of 3 books, a 669-page text, a 488-page workbook for students, and a 92-page manual for teachers. The order in which students choose to use the books and the way in which they study them depend on their particular needs and preferences.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. And I really like that because it's so flexible. It's like, yes, it's, later on, I think it says that it's a quote unquote required course, but there's all this flexibility. It's like, you find the best way that is going to meet your needs and preferences. So the book, the course is going to work with you to support you in in following the course and learning what's there. So it's like almost like bending backwards to make it easy for us to read it and you practice it. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Uh, the curriculum the course proposes is carefully conceived and is explained step by step at both the theoretical and the practical levels. It emphasizes application rather than theory and experience rather than theology. It specifically states that, quote, a universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible but necessary, unquote. Manual, page 77. Although Christian in statement, the course deals with universal spiritual themes. It emphasizes it is but one version of the universal curriculum. There are many others, this one differing from them only in form. They all lead to God in the end. Okay. So again, I really like that it's not this, strict dogma like, this is the way and this is the only way. And
Yeah.
if you don't follow this way, you're going to, uh, burn in hell or something like that. So, so it really recognizes that the universal curriculum can be learned in many different ways, and this is just one way. Um, and let's see, and that it's not just an intellectual thing, with learning theory and theology. But you have to practice it. That's the main thing. It's the application and the experience because, you know, like the quote says, a universal theology is impossible. And that's why we have so many religions because there's disagreements on the theology. But if you get down to the truth, there's only one truth, and that can be experienced. And that's what would be the uniting oneness that we all want to experience and to realize and to know as what we are in truth. So,
Yeah. Mhm.
uh-huh. Anything, Connie?
Not at this point.
Okay, all right. Do you want to go next then?
The text is largely theoretical and sets forth the concepts on which the course's thought system is based. Its ideas contain the foundation for the workbook's lessons. Without the practical application the workbook provides, the text would remain largely a series of abstractions, which would hardly suffice to bring about the thought reversal at which the course aims.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yes, so we're going to be studying the text, but but the ideas we're studying, without the practical application of them with the lessons, with the workbook lessons, which basically, you know, are 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 teaching us the value of forgiveness and and the benefit of practicing forgiveness ultimately. Um, so without doing that, the text itself is just a lot of abstract thoughts. But however, they are let's see, they are the foundation for the workbook lessons. Um, so it's interesting that they are the foundation, but without practicing it, you're not building anything. You're like, uh, it's a wonderful foundation, and then you have to practice to actually build your house on the foundation. Otherwise, um, or you're just stuck with a foundation if you don't do the practice lessons and you don't have a house, to build
Yeah.
that you build. Yeah.
Mhm.
You just stay stuck in your head with the theory and thinking about it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
some people do that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it doesn't work. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It,
And I know for me, I started with the workbook. Looked at the course a couple of times and went, woof. But I just stayed with the workbook and then eventually got back to reading the course. And so we all have our different ways of getting to it, like you were saying, Eloisa. Yeah,
mhm. Mhm.
there's no rules about it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Sonia?
Oh no, it just reminded me of school, like when I was in college, the it's like if you only do the text but don't do the actual application, it's kind of like learning to study like for your degree or like something like trying to learn to ride a bike and you read all about it, but it's useless if you don't have the bike, to actually, yeah, you'll just fall if you don't actually do it.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't apply the learning if you don't get on the bike and do the practice.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Okay, so the workbook includes 365 lessons, one for each day of the year. It is not necessary, however, to do the lessons at that tempo, and one might want to remain with a particularly appealing lesson for more than one day. The instructions urge only that not more than one lesson a day should be attempted. The practical nature of the workbook is underscored by the introduction to its lessons, which emphasizes experience through application rather than a prior commitment to a spiritual goal. Okay, so that's kind of what we were saying. It's pretty flexible as far as the lessons are concerned. And the only thing that it really urges is not to try to rush through the lessons, because then it would be just like reading them. It would be just like reading a text. I could go through and read all the lessons in a week and say, okay, I'm done. I did all the lessons. Uh, uh, well, I read through all the lessons, but yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
so yeah, because it takes time to really kind of let that lesson soak through and consider it and sit with it and chew mull it over. So anyway,
Oh, is it my turn?
Um, I don't know.
I can read. I'll
Back.
just read.
Okay.
Okay. Some of the ideas in the workbook presents, you will find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. This does not matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. You are not asked to judge them at all. You are asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to you and will show you that they are true.
Okay. Okay, so, that's really good because you don't have to disqualify yourself and say, oh, this is not for me because I don't believe any of this.
Yeah.
So the only little willingness is that you're asked to apply the ideas as, as asked to in the instructions. And so it means that you are willing to just be open to see what actually shows up. So you don't have to believe it. You don't have to not believe it. You just want to be open and practice it. Um, and I think that's that little openness that we really we want the truth, and that we are open to seeing it for ourselves. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So let's see. Okay, so do I go, Connie, or are you next?
Uh, I think
Remember,
you go.
okay, remember only this. You need not believe the ideas. You need not accept them, and you need not even welcome them. Yeah, some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease their efficacy. But do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required. Workbook, page 2. Yes, so um, so we want to recognize that, you know, when we start reading the book, there's going to be a lot of ideas that we're just like, oh, no way, there's just a lot of resistance to them. But that's okay. That's okay. You just apply them and see for yourself. So you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And the only thing it asks is that we do not make exceptions in applying the ideas, because if we start making exceptions, okay, we start trying to control and therefore filter, you see, what is there. And once we start doing that, we start distorting. We start distorting, which is what the ego is really good at,
Mm,
because because we the because the ego thinking um, tries very hard to see only what it already believes. Okay, precisely because it's protecting those beliefs and doesn't want to change those beliefs. So
mhm,
anything that would contradict those beliefs, we would want to resist. And not only do we want to resist, but we want to say, oh, well, that doesn't apply here. Let me just make an exception to that and just disregard it. So that we're actually protecting our own thought system, and therefore we're working, you could say that we are working against our own intention of being willing to receive some light and some truth, which means that, yeah, we're going to see things differently. And if we don't want to see things differently, then we're resisting change. And if we're doing the Course in Miracles, it's because we want change. We're tired of the way things are. So that's why we want to just not make any exceptions, just be open to it. And you don't have to believe it. Just see how it applies and what happens.
Well, I have to admit, at the start, I did a lot of that. Well, I don't know about that. That's okay. We'll just keep that hidden in the corner and not tell anybody about that. It's okay. I don't have to. But yeah, those are the things that need to be uncovered for sure and really looked at.
Yeah, because that's just the way that the ego perception works, and so it's but it's good that you're aware of it. So even if you do it, being aware that you're doing it is already very helpful, because you're not hiding it from yourself, which is another layer of protection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sonia, is it your turn? Finally.
Is it? Oh, okay. Finally, the manual for teachers, which is written in question and answer form, provides answers to some of the more likely questions a student might ask. It also includes a clarification of a number of the terms the course uses, explaining them within the theoretical framework of the text.
Okay. All right. The course makes no claim to finality, nor are the workbook lessons intended to bring the student's learning to completion. At the end, the reader is left in the hands of his or her own internal teacher, who will direct all subsequent learning as he sees fit. While the course is comprehensive in scope, truth cannot be limited to any finite form, as is clearly recognized in the statement at the end of the workbook. Okay, so yes, so this is not like a book, like a fictional book, right? It's a story, and then at the end you say, oh yes, well that's the end of the story, unless there's a sequel and they leave things, But so it's really a course that it from my experience here, it is a way to help us connect to our internal teacher, which of course calls the Holy Spirit, and that connection will then direct all subsequent learning, um, because everything that we experience, everything that happens, everything that we encounter in the world can be used by the internal teacher to heal the mind, to heal the world, to bring forth love and light. And it is not just, I'm done with a course when I finish the book. It's almost like the beginning of another way, a different way to live in the world, but not be identified with the world. And so there's a lot of freedom. There's more freedom with that, the more we are guided by the inner teacher. Yeah. Okay.
This course is a beginning, not an end. No more specific lessons are assigned, for there is no more need of them. Henceforth, hear but the voice for God. He will direct your efforts, telling you exactly what to do, how to direct your mind, and when to come to Him in silence, asking for His sure direction and His certain word. That's the workbook, page 487.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's see what it says. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Okay. And that's basically the the summary for the whole course. And it's so interesting that it's so obvious, but our mind has become so complex and therefore confused by the so much complexity that what is so simple and so obvious um, is 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 not simple and not obvious. um, um, so it's almost like it's hiding in plain sight. Um, yeah, nothing real can be threatened. Well, okay, because nothing unreal exists. So, um, so nothing real can be threatened because reality, the true reality, um, can does not have an opposite. It's whole, and um, what is unreal, we would think, is the opposite of reality. Okay, but what is unreal does not exist. So how can it be a threat? It can't be a threat. And I think that once the mind really, really understands and is not confused, does not have its point of reference upside down between reality and unreality, um, then it can really, just live in peace and experience the peace of God within. Um, Even when we are perceiving a world that seems to be in conflict and in fear, um, we can recognize the reality and the unreality, and therefore we we don't um, get sucked into the fear, and we don't get sucked into the conflict.
Yeah. Okay. This is how A Course in Miracles begins. It makes a fundamental distinction between the real and the unreal, between knowledge and perception. Knowledge is truth under one law, the law of love or God. Truth is unalterable, eternal, and unambiguous. It can be unrecognized, but it cannot be changed. It applies to everything that God created, and only what He created is real. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process. It has no opposite, no beginning, and no end. It merely is.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this itself is a really great summary of the distinction um, between knowledge and perception, and between what is real and unreal. Um, and if we could just keep those as a fundamental um, foundation, and apply that to everything, to all ideas, it would be a really good way to not get confused. uh, uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a question actually about the word, the process. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process.
Mhm.
Does that mean does the process mean like linear, like time, like things that seem to happen like from one point and then does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
I don't understand what the process word means. Like,
Okay. It's beyond learning because it's beyond time and process. So when we think of learning, we think of a process of going from this point where I seem to not know something, Okay. And there's a process by which I learn. And
Oh,
now I, in that little gap, I have learned something. And so
okay.
now I seem to know something. So there seems to be this time that goes by in which I need to learn. And it's a process of learning, right? It doesn't just go like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, because that's how we learned that that's what we learned learning is. so
Mm-hmm.
so the idea of learning is a concept that we think takes time and is a process, a gradual process. So that's why it doesn't have to take time. That's why the course says that it saves time, because because um, because what is real is beyond learning, because it's beyond time and process. So once we get into the idea of miracles, you'll be able to see that that the time and the process are, you could kind of say, are you go above that. Let's see, you leave the idea of time and process behind. You
Okay.
let go of those ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. Yeah, about process. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
because
it does feel like we're in this thing and that
yes.
we have to
Yeah.
learn all of this.
Yeah, but I have it written down on my wall. It says there's no, let's see, to be whole and complete takes no time.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh.
because it's a recognition. You see, it's a recognition, and that recognition doesn't have to take a lifetime or many lifetimes,
Mm-hmm.
but but the mind chooses the
Mhm.
time in which it is ready to accept that. So the recognition is, is an instant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's remembering
Hmm.
what we think we've lost or forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And what we've done is we've said, and you know what? That's going to take a really long time, because I am not so sure I want to let go of time yet. I I
Mm.
kind of still, want a little bit of specialness. Uh, so I'm
Yeah.
kind of not done experiencing, what goes with specialness, which is humiliation, but that's how I'm choosing to do it. So, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so Um, okay, so the world of perception, on the other hand, is the world of time, of change, of beginnings and endings. It is based on interpretation and not on facts. It is the world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death. It is learned rather than given, selective in its perceptual emphasis, unstable in its functioning, and inaccurate in its interpretations. Okay. So, yeah, so there's a lot there to really look at, because you know, our interpretations, we really want them to just be facts. We try really, really hard to convince everybody that the way I look at this is true. It's a fact, and you better believe it. Uh, but it's not. It's just my own personal little distortion of what I want to see. So, and unfortunately, it's a belief in scarcity, loss, separation, death, and therefore there's suffering. There's a lot of suffering. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so, yeah, but the good news is it's not what we are in truth. And to really discover that is a blessing. It's a gift. It's grace. So anyway,
Yeah, that's a big paragraph for sure.
yeah, it
Mhm.
is. Yeah.
Like, woo, yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Let's see. Did I just read? I think I just
I
Yeah,
read.
think so.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, you
So,
want to go, Connie? Yeah.
oh, I'm confused. I thought
I
Sonia
know.
was that.
I know. We're all confused. It's okay.
Just,
It's okay.
just jump in. It doesn't really matter.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
it's all the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
All right.
Uh,
Sonia.
Oh, okay. From knowledge and perception, respectively, two distinct thought systems arise, which are opposite in every respect. In the realm of knowledge, no thoughts exist apart from God, because God and his creations share one will. The world of perception, however, is made by the belief in opposites and separate wills, in perpetual conflict with each other and with God. What perception sees and hears appears to be real because it permits into awareness only what conforms to the wishes of the perceiver.
Hmm.
This leads to a world of illusions, a world which needs constant defense precisely because it is not real.
Yikes. Yeah.
yeah. Yes. So the world of perception is made by the belief in opposites and separate wills. So the belief in opposites, that's the idea of duality. Um, and so, of course, there's going to be perpetual conflict with each other and God. And because we perceive that wills can be separate and individual, and what I want is not what you want, and we're going to have to kind of battle it out and see who gets what they want, because we both can't have it. So it's a world of scarcity. And um, but in the realm of knowledge, there is no separation. So there is no thought. There is nothing that exists apart from God, because God and His creation share one will, and so there is no duality. So you could say it's a non-dualistic system, and it's a system that is not a system of perception, okay, where we like I was saying, we interpret things the way we want to, in a very specific way, because that benefits us in some way, makes us feel good, uh, makes us the good guy and someone else the bad guy, et cetera, et cetera. And so um, it's it's not the world of knowledge is not a place where you try to control uh, what's happening, because they're separate wills, and in order to get your way, you're going to have to kind of manipulate and battle and all of that. And that's why the world of perception needs constant defense, okay, because it is not real. And so we make up our own little um, world of this is how it is for me, okay, and this is what suits me, and this is what I like, and this is what I prefer, and everything else, all of you have to conform to my wishes, okay? That's how it works. And if you don't accept that, I'm going to be very displeased and I'm going to have a problem with you. Uh, so, yeah. Yeah. So you could see that it's very delusional. I mean, it's an illusion to think, oh, yes, I can just sit here on top of the world and everyone else is just going to do whatever I wish. Um, so for that reason, it's, illusion as delusion. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. When you have been caught in the world of perception, you are caught in a dream. You cannot escape without help because everything your senses show merely witness to the reality of the dream. God has provided the answer, the only way out, the true helper. It is the function of his voice, his Holy Spirit, to mediate between the two worlds. He can do this because, while on the one hand he knows the truth, on the other he also recognizes our illusions, but without believing in them. It is the Holy Spirit's goal to help us escape from the dream world by teaching us how to reverse our thinking and unlearn our mistakes. Forgiveness is the Holy Spirit's great learning aid in bringing this thought reversal about. However, the Course has its own definition of what forgiveness really is, just as it defines the world in its own way.
Mhm. Yes. So, yes. So the world of perception can really be like a little prison. Okay. And, and some of us, mm, you know, don't see it like a prison. We are kind of uncomfortable with it because we're familiar with it. That's kind of all we think that we know. And it's limiting and all of that, uh, but until we really get tired of the suffering that comes with it, we may not really even think about asking for help or think about, oh my God, I need to escape. I got to get out of here. It's unbearable. And so, uh, but when we're ready, we ask for help because God is the one that can provide the answer, because the answer cannot be within the problem, which is the world of perception that we've made up in our own little mind. It's a whole distortion of what reality is. And now, um, we become so, what's the world? So caught up in our own little world of delusion that we can't get ourselves out of it. And so we do need to ask for help. Um, And that's the function of the voice, the Holy Spirit, who can mediate between the two worlds, which is the real world and the world of delusion that we have kind of boxed ourselves in. And the reason why he can do that is because the 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 Holy Spirit is our link to truth. So on the one hand, he knows the truth. And so he also can see our illusions, but because he doesn't believe in them, he is that part of our mind that can see that they're illusions, that they're false. And that's the source of healing for our mind. Because the mind will not believe in what it sees and knows to be false. But when we can't tell the difference between what's true and false, we start believing stuff that's false. And then we don't know the difference. We just
Yeah.
keep teaching
Mhm.
ourselves to not know the difference. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And so escape from the dream world is is helping us to reverse our thinking, and unlearn our mistakes, which we have made because we are believing in what is not true, um, because we are giving it value fundamentally. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. The world we see merely reflects our own internal frame of reference, the dominant ideas, wishes, and emotions in our mind. Quote, projection makes perception, unquote. Text, page 445. We look inside first, decide the kind of world we want to see, and then project that world outside, making it the truth as we see it. So it's a personal truth. We make it true by our interpretations of what it is we are seeing. If we are using perception to justify our own mistakes, our anger, our impulses to attack, our lack of love, in whatever form it may take, we will see a world of evil, destruction, malice, envy, and despair. All this we must learn to forgive, not because we are being quote unquote good and quote unquote charitable, but because what we are seeing is not true. We have distorted the world by our twisted defenses and are therefore seeing what is not there. As we learn to recognize our perceptual errors, we also learn to look past them or quote unquote forgive. At the same time, we are forgiving ourselves, looking past our distorted self concepts to the self with a capital S that God created in us and as us. So let's
That's a lot.
see. Yeah, there is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, and the course spends many chapters just on all this.
Mhm.
But the main idea is that projection makes perception. So the world outside that we see, that we experience, is simply a reflection of our thinking, of our beliefs. Okay. And and those thoughts and beliefs we are protecting by not
Yeah.
looking within. Okay. And therefore, we are supporting that perception in the world because those are our wishes. And that's really hard to accept because we see, like it says here, all the forms that it takes. We see evil, destruction, malice. We see all of that. And and it's because we are unwilling to look at our anger, our impulses to attack, and our lack of love and forgive them as mistakes. Okay. We want to justify them. And that's why we don't forgive them because we want to hold on to them. And so what we've done is that we have conditioned our mind to value things that are destructive to us and therefore will be seen as destructive in the world. Um, because even though letting out our anger at someone or whatever may give us a sense of control or a sense of safety or a sense of power or highness or whatever, or maybe if we see it as justified attack, maybe it feels like, hey, now we're even, you know I you know um, and so so we can look at it in all those ways, but in the end, everyone can tell you now that anger is unhealthy and that it has stressful, detrimental effects. that will show up in the body. So it's, it's, we're in denial to really say that it's not hurting us, because it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It can be really overwhelming to think that everything I see or think is just incorrect. It can be a lot, to just go, whew, man. But it could also be very freeing.
Well, yeah. And if you really look at, what I'm seeing, especially if we're looking at conflict and destruction, um, and we say, wait a minute, so none of that is true. Well, that's not a bad thing. Yes, it makes me wonder, why have I chosen to be looking at this for all these years when I could have been choosing to see love and compassion, So that's really hard to accept. But, but, but the idea that I don't have to be looking at destruction, I don't have to be looking at malice. That's good. I'm really open to that. I don't want to look at all this conflict and all of this, right? But the idea that I have been wrong all of my life, that's a little hard to swallow, because
Mhm.
because I have counted, doggone it, on my perception. you know
Right,
and
right.
it has gotten me this far in the world. So why would I abandon it now? um so yeah, there's so there's some little challenges there along the way, and and it's really just about being as honest as possible as we can with ourselves, and and not making ourselves bad or wrong about it. That's the really important thing, because if we do make ourselves wrong or bad, or start uh, putting ourselves down for it, well, then we're just holding on to that. We're keeping it stuck. We're not letting it go, because we're adding another layer to not let it go, because we're not forgiving it. Um, so
Well,
Yeah.
you used a really good word there. You said I could be seeing love and compassion instead. So I don't hear that word used that much, but that, when we think we are perceiving some horror in the world out there, it makes it sound like, oh, we just gloss over that and say it isn't true. But to be able to see it in a different way with love and compassion. I think compassion is a big piece of it. What do you think?
yes, so the idea is similar to the idea that I started with when I said that my kids had asthma. And I had to really question, how can a loving God be responsible for this? Okay, that would
Mhm.
not be a loving God. So in the same manner, we can look at all of the destruction and violence in the world, all of the addictions and all of the suffering and all of that, and we could say, how could that even be possible? Okay, um, if God is love and I am created in the likeness of God, and therefore I am love and loving, okay, how is it possible that I could be seeing this? You see that? And so no, it's not possible. There's a little discrepancy there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do have to look at my beliefs and the times that I have chosen to attack, and the times that I have chosen to act out of a lack of love, where I could have shown compassion, where I could have chosen to forgive, where someone said something, it was a little dig, and I could have simply overlooked it, but no, I decided to say, oh, really? Did you really have to say that? You know, there's the tiny little things that we interpret as, a little underhanded little attack. And, am I going to forgive that, or am I going to um, respond and react to it? Because remember that that's my interpretation. This person just said what he said, but maybe there's no attack intended at all. Maybe it's all I am projecting it, it's my own little desire to just attack him a little bit, which I don't want to look at. Yeah. So anyway,
yeah, and by taking it on, you're making it real in some form. Yeah. Okay.
Whose turn is it?
Well, I just read. I do remember.
Okay. Okay. Sin is defined as lack of love. Text page 11. Since love is all there is, sin in the sight of the Holy Spirit is a mistake to be corrected rather than an evil to be punished. Our sense of inadequacy, weakness, and incompletion comes from the strong investment in the scarcity principle that governs the whole world of illusions. From that point of view, we seek in others what we feel is wanting in ourselves. We love another in order to get something ourselves. That, in fact, is what passes for love in the dream world. There can be no greater mistake than that, for love is incapable of asking for anything. So that's unconditional love, basically. Not the love in order to get something for ourselves, but the love that is incapable of asking for anything.
Yeah.
Yes, because that love is not lacking. And so that love is complete and whole and makes no exceptions. And therefore, it does not need to get anything for itself, because it just gives, because it has, and it gives because it knows that it has. And therefore, there is no scarcity. And so there's no sense of incompletion. There's no sense of inadequacy. There's no sense of weakness in terms of, I am vulnerable because I have needs and I depend on you to meet them. And so I better be pleasing to you, or you're going to withdraw, what I want you, that I need from you. So it's this whole it's this whole idea of trying to get what I need from you, because I start off with the idea that with sin, that I am a sinner, and that somehow I have lost the grace of God, and therefore I am separate from God and I am incomplete because God is everything. So if I have just separated from God because I am a sinner, I have sinned against God, I have offended God, then I cannot have everything. How can I, if I have just left that behind in the separation? And so now I kind of have to, try to get what I can from others. And so that's fundamentally the greatest mistake that we can make is to confuse, is to make love lacking, incomplete. To say that, love, I mean, um, that love as God, as the creator, that is everything, could be changed and made into a form that is um, now limited and weak and vulnerable and special, because it's so precious now. It's this little, thing that we have to reserve in our heart for just a few people because there's not enough love to go around.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me, I have a couple people that I know that don't like to use the word love. Like often they will never throw that word out, like because they have it as like a very, very like special thing that they only say to certain people. And that's how they tell you that they care for you like immensely, But I've always thought of that as kind of strange because I guess that would be the two distinctions, right? Um, Between the special love and the
Yes, so we've made the love of God, which is one creator of all life, all loving, and we've made it into a special love that is for a unique person, or that is only for those children that obey the law of God. So a lot of
oh.
religions will say basically, if you are obedient to the laws of God, which they will put in their theology, obey your mother, obey your father, those kind of things. Do not lie, do not steal, do not covet your neighbor's wife, that kind of stuff. So in other words, if you stay clear of sin, and the world is full of sin, so so it's not really possible to stay away from sin. So in the end, we're either in favor with God or we're out of favor with God. And so we make the love of God also special, which is exclusive and limited. And so,
Okay.
yeah, we've,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it says actually in the next paragraph here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only minds can really join, and whom God has joined, no man can put asunder. Text, page 356. It is, however, only at the level of Christ's mind that true union is possible and has, in fact, never been lost. The quote unquote little I seeks to enhance itself by external approval, external possessions, and external quote unquote love. The self, capital S, that God created needs nothing. It is forever complete, safe, loved, and loving. It seeks to share rather than to get, to extend rather than project. It has no needs and wants to join with others out of their mutual awareness of abundance.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so it's only at the level of minds that we can really join, because the body itself is an idea of separation. I mean, you can't say that, I mean, you can think of maybe marriage as the joining of, two selves, but it's particularly aimed at fidelity, when it comes to,
Yeah.
sexuality. So it's definitely looking at it in terms of bodies coming together, um, and being a special relationship. So So in that sense, you cannot, the body cannot truly join, because it's an arrangement. The relationship is an arrangement, it's an agreement, between, the two people. But the mind, is as the Christ mind is the true union, as one creation that God created. And so at the level of mind, we are joined. Even if we think we have a separate mind, brain, um, we it's not really separate, because what I believe influences what you believe. And if the minds were not joined, that would not happen. Um, it's what the ideas that I come up with, may seem like novel inventions, but to on the other side of the world, someone else is having the same idea. Okay.
Mhm.
So, um, and there's other studies where they show that the mind is just one, it's joined. So
Mm.
yeah.
So there's not really any separation at all at the level of when you really join through with minds, not through bodies, but
Yes. So separation is a belief and it's a perception. So the belief of separation is projected onto the world. And so we see a world of bodies, of objects. I'm the perceiver, I'm the subject, and I look outside and in my yard, I see, I see a tree, I see a chair, an object, and those two are separate. They're not the same thing, they're different. Okay. So the belief in separation is that idea um, that things can be independent and kind of self-sufficient in themselves, uh, because it assumes that God is not the one source of all creation. It
mhm,
assumes that, okay, yes, I see that lemon tree there, but that lemon tree is made by the seeds from the lemons that come from that tree. So it's self-sufficient in the sense that if I keep planting those seeds, I keep bringing up more lemon trees. Uh, and so the idea of procreation, at the physical form, it takes on the idea that I am not a creation of God. I am self-created,
mhm,
or self-made in terms of the chair. Well, the chair is useful to me and I made it. So I can make those things that will be of benefit and comfort to myself. So I am providing for my own self and my own needs. Oh, wait a minute. Except that I am incomplete. I am incomplete and I need a partner to complete myself. But never mind that exception. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So it's an illusion. The idea of self-sufficiency is an illusion, because if you're incomplete and you have separated from God, how can you be self-sufficient?
you can't.
You can't, because you're incomplete. By definition, you're insufficient.
Mhm,
So, yeah.
And that's how we end up feeling
Yeah.
yeah.
the lack.
Yes. Yes. And that just confirms that, yes, it's true. We are insufficient. And yes, we did separate from our source that is whole and complete. So it just reinforces itself in a little loop that's nice and
Mhm.
cozy, but it has no real source. It's just like, well, yeah, well, because of this, and 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 because of this.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. So let's see. The special relationships of the world are destructive, selfish, and childishly egocentric.
Mm.
Yet, if given to the Holy Spirit, these relationships can become the holiest things on earth, the miracles that point the way to the return to heaven. The world uses its special relationships as a final weapon of exclusion and a demonstration of separateness. The Holy Spirit transforms them into perfect lessons in forgiveness and in awakening from the dream. Each one is an opportunity to let perception be healed and errors corrected. Each one is another chance to forgive oneself by forgiving the other, and each one becomes still another invitation to the Holy Spirit and to the remembrance of God. Okay. Okay, so I think with this paragraph we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So the special relationship in the world, like it says, are destructive, selfish, and childishly egocentric, and yet the Holy Spirit can use them to practice. We can use them to practice forgiveness. So, um, and and when we forgive the other, we are basically forgiving ourselves because we would not be seeing anything wrong in the other if we had not already judged in our own mind that that was unforgivable, that that was wrong. Um, so what we're really forgiving is our own thinking that we are now seeing in the world. Um, because that's what we're going to see, because it has to reflect back our thoughts. Um, so so it's a really good opportunity to see what our thinking is when we look at our our um, our upsets with others, and the situations that we find ourselves in.
so that's what we're always forgiving, I guess.
That's
Just
what
our thinking.
Yes, because that's where the mistakes are. That's where the belief in separation originates. Okay. And and um, if we perceive it in the world, it's not because the world is self-sufficient and it originates in the world. The world is not self-sufficient. It's our mind that that is choosing to see separation. Um,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
and that's a way to deny truth, that in truth we were created as one creation with no inequality, with no differences in content. The form, yeah, it's going to look different. But why am I going to look at my little dog and say, oh, I am superior to you? We are not equal. You bet I am your master. You better obey me. I mean, I can say that and I can believe that, okay, but that is just supporting the belief that all life is not the same, and therefore that somehow God created levels, of inferiority to superiority, uh, which a lot of, I mean, when I grew up, um, in school, they give you all the hierarchies, right? The apex predator is on the top, right? I mean, come on, that was the dinosaur. Where's the dinosaur? So much for the apex predator. So I mean, look at all the vast civilizations that have existed on Earth. What's left? We go visit the ruins, their temples made out of stone, which is the only thing that survived. So yeah. So anyway, that's we have we have the whole world as an opportunity to forgive and to receive healing for the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hi, Connie. It's good to see you. Yeah.
So the dinosaurs never existed.
Well,
What?
they um, they
Really?
existed as the thought of the apex predator. I mean, think about even now. I mean, we take a lot of time and effort to dig out those bones, and and piece them back together and make sure we put them in the museums, right? I mean, they were big deals. So uh, we definitely want to believe in that idea, or we wouldn't be. It's like, oh yeah, big bones, okay. Little bones, big bones. Oh. So yeah. Anyway. Okay, so this is probably a good place to stop. I'm not sure how much more we have, but we can continue
Yeah,
next time.
very good.
Yeah.
Very
Yep.
good.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you. Thank you. Good class.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. See you next time.
Okay,
Okay, bye.
bye.
Bye.